Hi everyone, in this video we are going to look at how to solve non-right angle triangles. Now remember, solving a triangle means getting all three sides and all three angles. So let's look at our first problem. In this question we have triangle MRV and we have three sides but no angles. If we have three sides, in order to find an angle, we're going to have to use Coase law. So that's our first step. We are going to use Coase law to find an angle. And it doesn't matter which angle we choose to find. I'm going to choose to find angle. So if we're using Coase law, remember cos of M would be equal to r squared plus v squared minus m squared over 2 times r times v. And I'm going to label this triangle with the sides just because we don't want to mix them up. So side r would be opposite angle r, side m would be opposite angle m, and side v would be opposite angle v. Then plugging in our numbers, we have cos of m is equal to 3.5 squared plus 4.0 squared minus 3.2 squared divided by 2 times 3.5 times 4. I'm just going to simplify this a little bit more. We're going to solve for our numerator. So putting the entire numerator into my calculator, I got 18.01. And putting the entire denominator into the calculator, so 2.3. So 2 times 3.5 times 4, I get an answer of 28. Now remember, that is cos of m. In order to find angle m, we are going to need to take the inverse of cos of both sides. When we do that, we get angle m is equal to 49.96. I'm going to round that to 50 degrees. So that means m is equal to 50 degrees. Now that we have one angle, we can actually switch over to use sine law because we have an opposite side, opposite angle pair. So once we have that, we're able to use sine law, which is what I'm going to suggest we do in our next step. So step 2 will be use sine law to find, and let's just say we're looking for angle V. So this angle right here. If we do that, we know that sine of V over side B is equal to sine of M, so the angle we do have, over side M. Plugging in numbers here, we get sine of B, the angle that we don't know, divided by side B, which is 4, is equal to sine of M, 50 degrees, divided by side M, which is 3.2. Let's solve for sine V now. We're just going to multiply both sides by 4. So sine of V is equal to sine of 50 over 3.2 multiplied by 4. And in order to find V, we're going to take the inverse sine of both sides. So 4 times sine of 50 over 3.2. You should be good to put this in your calculator all at once. Remember, you are pressing Shift and then sine And then you want to do bracket 4 times sine of 50 divided by 3.2. And sometimes you need brackets around the sine of 50 as well. And that will give you angle V, which in my case is 73 degrees. Okay, so now we have angle M and angle V. I can go up and put angle V back in the triangle. So that is 73 right here. And then we just have to find one more angle, which is angle R. Now, once you have two angles in a triangle, it is very easy to get the third angle because all angles add up to 180 degrees, which means we can very easily just calculate angle R. So angle R is going to be equal to 180 degrees minus 50 minus 73. When we subtract these, we get that R is equal to 57 degrees. Once we put that into our triangle, we see that we have a completely solved triangle. So we have all sides as well as all angles. Let's look at one more example where we have to completely solve a triangle. So this is triangle GJL, and we need to find one side is missing and two angles are missing. So we have two sides as well as the angle between them, which should tell you that we are good to use cos law. And we can use cos law to find this other side, side L. I'm going to put it in cursive so it doesn't look like a 1. So our first step here is calculate side L. And remember how we're going to do this is L squared is equal to J squared plus G squared minus 2JG cos of L. Plugging everything in, we get 8.7 squared plus 7.4 squared minus 2, 8.7, 7.4 cos of 82 degrees. Let's solve for this. So 8.7 squared plus 7.4 squared, that works out to 130.45. We are subtracting 2 times 8.7 times 7.4, which is 128.76 times cos of 82 degrees. When we subtract this, we get 130.45 minus 128.76 cos of 82, which gives us that L squared is equal to 112.5. But remember, that is L squared. In order to calculate L, we have to take the square root of that. And that gives you that L is equal to 10.6. So now we can go back and see how this affects our triangle. So up here, we know that that side is equal to 10.6. Now we actually have a triangle where we have an opposite side, opposite angle pair, which means we can use sine law. And sine law, I think, is a bit easier. So let's switch over to that to find angle, let's say, J. So if we're using sine law, step 2, calculate J. We know that sine of J divided by side of j is equal to sine of L divided by angle L. So that means sine of j divided by 8.7 is equal to sine of 82 degrees divided by 10.6. Sine of j will then be equal to 8.7 times sine of 82 degrees divided by 10.6. And then we're able to take the inverse of both sides in order to figure out what j is equal to. And we get j equaling to about 54.3. And we can go ahead and put that into our triangle as well. Now we just need to find angle G, but again, this becomes quite easy because the three angles have to add up to 180 degrees. So when we go to step 3, which is calculate our final angle, calculate angle G, G is just going to be equal to 180 minus 54.3 minus 82. That's going to give us G is equal to 43.6 approximately. And we can see when we go and put that back into the triangle, 43.6 right here, we now have all three angles and all three sides, which means we have completely solved this triangle.